Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from Bruce Bartup, who says, Steve, if Trump had a brainwave and sacked Bannon, then appointed a liberal board and saw to the SCOTUS fairly, would your anger issues with the new president-elect of USA diminish or just get better focus? If the answer is your anger would be more focused, what is it focused on? I mean, apart from the competence, unfitness to command, etc., and the policies and race, sex, nationality, religion, ability, sexuality, identity, economic burdens, apart from all that, what don't you like about the Don? That is such a great way to phrase that question. Other than all of his contemptible traits, what is it that you have against Donald Trump? And I suppose if he were appointing better people to his cabinet, if he were giving any indication that he was going to govern in a way that was completely unlike his campaign, then I would have to focus on all of those contemptible traits that you mentioned there in your question, Bruce. I would have to focus on the fact that he is a racist, sexist, xenophobic horror show of a human being who also seems to be incredibly ignorant and unprepared and incurious and thin-skinned and has no attention span and just a completely unfit person to serve as president of the United States. If his administration were shaping up to be a little bit more acceptable, relatively speaking, then I would focus on that, on the character and the quality of the person, which is non-existent. And that's the problem is, even if Trump were appointing this cabinet that was so much better than anybody would have thought, there is still no excuse for the fact that this person was elected president of the United States based on the campaign he ran and based on the kind of person that he is and always has been and has been showing us that he is for decades. A misogynist, racist, unrepentant, unapologetic liar who has no use for ethics, who has no interest in protecting the interests of anyone other than himself and his family and his friends, someone who is as corrupt as you could possibly imagine, someone who is a thin-skinned crybaby narcissist who lashes out and attacks anyone who he perceives as not liking him or not approving him or not applauding him loud enough when he displays the most basic signs of just decency, which is rare, by the way, that he even shows that much decency. There's no excuse for this person even being elected. So even if it turns out that he defies all expectations and he's like this amazing president, we're still not off the hook. We who are partially responsible for lifting him up and enabling him, and especially those of us who are culpable for him being elected because they voted for him, you're never getting off the hook for this. Never getting off the hook for this. Donald Trump should not have been elected president. He is manifestly unfit for that office. Shadowman 4710. My question would be, how are the Democrats going to reach out to working class when they're sucking up to Wall Street? The health of the working class is in direct opposition to the goals of the 1%, and you can't fight them if you spend all of your time taking donations from them. The thing is, it's not just the Democrats that are too cozy with Wall Street. The Republican Party is up Wall Street's ass as well. In fact, it's probably a lot further up Wall Street's ass than the Democrats are. So the way that Democrats convince the working class that they are on their side and that they are better for the working class people in this country than the Republicans is to advocate policies that will help the working class and then to carry those policies out when they have the power to do so. You know, I would not be nearly as troubled by the fact that, you know, Democratic candidates take donations from Wall Street connected donors if I thought that they were serious about raising the minimum wage or strengthening labor unions or, you know, passing laws that would mandate family leave for everybody, or strengthening healthcare coverage and making it more affordable for everybody. If Democrats did all of these things, and they do some of those things, and there are some Democrats who care very much about all of those issues, but if the Democratic Party as a whole convinced me that it was not only serious about these ideas in theory, but was willing to go to the mattresses to achieve these things, to fight for them with everything they have, then to me the Wall Street issue is a less urgent concern because it's something that affects both major parties. Now, in the long term, yes, absolutely. I would love to see campaign finance reform where all federal level elections, for Congress and Senate and the president are all just publicly funded. That would be my preferred solution. Where it's just there's a portion of tax revenue that is set aside to fund congressional and presidential elections, and we just leave private donations completely out of it. That way it's a level playing field. It's a fair level playing field. And that would cut off that problem of, well, there's all the Wall Street donations, there's all the Wall Street money. I would love to see that. But given the current situation and given the probability, the very low probability of significant reform in that area in the foreseeable future, I am much more concerned with having a Democratic Party that advocates for and fights for and is able to accomplish these goals that would help working class people, rather than trying to decide who is more in the pocket of Wall Street and who isn't. Kevin Logan, what do you make of all of Trump's backtracking on promises and filling his cabinet with establishment types? Personally, I'm pleased that he has tamed the more extreme elements of some of his campaign pledges, and I'm loving the alt-right meltdown over him breaking his promise to prosecute Hillary. It's still going to be a shitty presidency, but it might not be as terrible as I had feared. Am I being too optimistic here? Well, time will tell. As I alluded to in my answer to the first question, it's possible that Trump's presidency would not be a disaster. Like, you can say, well, Jeff Sessions is an incredibly racist piece of garbage, but at least he's an experienced legislator. At least he is, technically speaking, qualified for the post to which he has been appointed. He probably won't burn the Justice Department down, literally. So there's that, But I guess maybe, yeah, I guess the short answer is, yeah, I think you are being a little too optimistic, but I completely get it because, we try to grab onto any handhold that there is. It's sort of like any port in a storm. We're facing 4 years of Donald Trump as president of the United States, and anything that we can sort of latch onto to tell ourselves, okay, maybe it won't be as bad as we thought it was. Oh, look, so he's appointing some establishment. Oh, okay, Rance Priebus, he's going to be chief of staff. So he's not, he's sort of normal. He's not the worst Republican, I guess. So that might not be so bad. I mean, I think that's a reasonable thing to do. I think it's a completely understandable thing to do. Doesn't make me optimistic. It doesn't really make it any better for me. As I said in the answer to Bruce's question, I think it's going to be a complete shit show. But maybe it won't be. Maybe it'll just be kind of a shit show. And I guess that's the best we can hope for. Vitamin W, why couldn't Occupy Wall Street be as stubborn and refuse to end like the Tea Party? Because Occupy Wall Street didn't have an end game. I think it boils down to that. Occupy Wall Street was too unfocused. The Tea Party movement, as deplorable as it was and is, as much as I oppose it and detest its premises and its principles and many of the people involved with it, the Tea Party was, from almost the very beginning, a political movement. There were people involved in the Tea Party, people pulling the strings of Tea Partiers, people within the movement who saw very concrete political goals. They wanted to run candidates. They wanted to get people elected. They wanted to get people elected in state legislatures. They wanted to get people elected to Congress, to the Senate, excuse me. And Occupy Wall Street never really had any of that level of focus and organization. If Occupy Wall Street had been able to transition from the rallies, the street protests, the sit-ins, all of that, to becoming a focused political force where they were identifying leaders, they were finding candidates in districts and running them for office and coming together with coherent, powerful campaigns that spoke to the issues that Occupy Wall Street was concerned about and that resonated with people outside of the movement, then I think we would still have Occupy Wall Street as a force in politics, or at least it would still exist in some way. And I think that was the downfall. The Tea Party, for everything reprehensible about it, went about it strategically the right way. They ran candidates for offices, they fired up the base of voters, and they got some people elected. And they had some influence on the Republican Party. And Occupy Wall Street never really got beyond the let's get angry and take to the streets section. And that's a very important section, and I'm not denigrating getting angry and taking to the streets. I think that's a completely legitimate thing to do. But if you want your getting out and taking to the streets to have long-lasting effects, if you want to really push for change in your society, you have to move beyond that at some point. You have to take part in the system. You have to run candidates for offices. You have to get people elected who will do what you want them to do, who will make your ideas into proposals, into legislation, into reality. And Occupy Wall Street didn't do that. 1511 Enterprises. After the comments about Buster Keaton in blackface in this video, I was going to ask what you make of D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, but now I see that you've already covered that on the Late Seating podcast, so instead I'll ask this. What do you make of the popularity of Al Jolson with black audiences? He was a great promoter and defender of black performers throughout his career, which is great, and yet he's probably also the best remembered blackface performer today, which is much harder to swallow these days. Interested in your thoughts on this. Jolson is a fascinating figure in a lot of ways. If we judge him by the standards of his day, he was probably quite a bit more progressive in his racial views than most people at the time. And yes, he did use his fame and his influence to defend and stand up for black artists and to try and fight discrimination against black artists on Broadway. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. I think it was a wonderful thing that he did by trying to strike a blow for racial equality. But at the same time, he was doing this while becoming a major star, performing what was traditionally black music while dressed up as a black person, while wearing blackface, which by our standards today would be completely unacceptable. Nowadays, when white artists appropriate black music, we ask that they do it without dressing up as black people. That's really the only change that we've made. We still prefer it when white people appropriate black music, and we find it much more acceptable to listen to black music when it's being done by white people. We just don't want them to actually dress up like black people and put makeup on anymore. That's too far. Everything up to that point is fine, though. And I think that's really the thing that is troubling about Jolson. It's not necessarily he himself, but I think it says something very troubling and something that is still very true about our culture. He appropriated blackness for his career, for his performances, and he became far more successful doing that than any actual black performer was at the time. And yes, it's great that he used his fame and his influence to help lift up some black performers, but I don't think it changes the fact that he lived in a society that would much rather see black music performed by a white person pretending to be a black person than by a black person. And I think we still live in that society today. Rick Schmielk. I'm writing this as enough money has been raised for a recount in at least one state. I'm wondering what your take on possible outcomes of this could be. As much as I despise Trump, I tend to think that a validation of the original count would just further embolden him, but I'm afraid that a reversal, i.e. Hillary being ruled the winner, would lead to a great uproar and possible violence. Even if it didn't, we'd be facing a minimum of 2 years of nothing getting done, as the new Congress would be even worse than they were to President Obama. Thoughts? I think you could easily argue that 2 years of nothing getting done would be far preferable to 2 years of lots of awful stuff getting done under a Trump presidency. But I think we're at a place now after this election where there's going to be widespread dissatisfaction and possibly even unrest no matter what happens. In the far more likely event that Trump is officially elected by the electors and he assumes the presidency on Inauguration Day, there are going to be lots of people, myself included, who are extremely unhappy about that, who are extremely worried about that, and are going to be making our voices heard and taking action through the political process, through protests, through whatever legal means are open to us to oppose him and stop him and thwart him as much as we can. And if in the far more unlikely event that these recounts are somehow able to change the result and Hillary becomes the president instead of Trump, I think we're going to see the same thing. There are going to be people who feel like Trump was cheated out of it. That I see, I told you all along it was rigged. They stole it. There are going to be people that feel that way. And they'll probably have similar reactions. They'll probably take to the streets or raise their fists and do whatever. I mean, So I don't think we can avoid that. I think the result of the election being accepted, being confirmed by the recounts, will trigger unrest and protests, and the election being overturned by those recounts would trigger unrest and protests. I think that's just where we're at. I think we're in a situation where Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by now close to 2.5 million votes nationwide. So I don't think that you could legitimately make a claim that she would be an illegitimate president if that sort of thing happened. But at the same time, prior to these recounts, Donald Trump won the Electoral College. So people could say, well, he's the legitimate president as well. So, I mean, what's the resolution? To my way of thinking, the best resolution would be to get the most fit person into the presidency, which is Hillary Clinton. I don't think that's going to happen, but if somehow it does happen through enough votes being found in the recounts to overturn the results in certain states, or by the electors going rogue and deciding not to vote for Trump, that to me is the preferable result. But I don't think that's going to happen. Matt Helmers, hey Steve, how long do you think it'll take the many individuals who supported Trump out of some misplaced sense of being anti-establishment to realize that by having a rich, fiscally conservative, evangelical-supported candidate win, they have become supporters of and champions for the establishment they claim to loathe? Many of these classical liberals should be natural opponents of a Republican administration. Here is my theory. Many of them are close to my age. We grew up with first Clinton, then Bush as the faces of the establishment. Furthermore, the establishment always denoted WASP culture. After Obama came to power, all of a sudden the establishment looks different. I think many of these individuals who supported Trump made the gamble that he couldn't possibly win and sought to posit themselves as being against the establishment, Clinton, the entire time. Now with Trump's victory, they are left to either support the conservative establishment represented by Trump that has always been here and that they at one time opposed, or they need to admit that they made a cynical gamble to appear edgy and cool, and now they are left supporting the same thing they at one time opposed so passionately. I think eventually it will dawn on some of these people, the people who are thoughtful enough, who are self-reflective enough, who are humble enough to grow and change and recognize that by supporting Trump in order to be contrarian or in order to be edgy, that they were being foolish and short-sighted, and they will grow out of that, and hopefully they will look back on their support of a man like Donald Trump as a source of great regret, and hopefully it'll be a learning experience for them, and they'll continue on and become better people because of it. But I don't think that many of the people who supported Trump publicly are going to have that kind of epiphany, or at least if they do, they're not going to let anyone else know about it because that would damage their brand. The people, for instance, here on YouTube who are part of the alt-right, anti-feminist, anti-SJW circles who supported Trump, I don't expect any of them to come out anytime soon or ever and say, oh, my bad, sorry, I made a mistake. I made a cynical calculation to appear edgy and anti-establishment, and I really fucked up. Trump is horrible. I apologize. I don't think any of them are going to say that. I don't think any of them are even capable of the kind of maturity and self-reflection and humility that is required to have such a realization. But among the people who watch those folks or listen to those folks on the radio or read their blogs or whatever, yeah, I think that will happen with a lot of people as they grow, as time goes on, as they are able to sort of look back on themselves and their lives and their beliefs and say, oh boy, what was I thinking? I think that'll happen. I hope it will, at least. But whether you hope or not, whatever your feelings are, one thing is absolutely going to happen right now, and that is the end of this section of the video and the beginning of the next section, which is a little something I like to call the lightning round. Pedaster, am I going to die because of climate change? Probably not, but your civilization is. Lucas Hackett, One Angry Brony. Yo, Steve, don't I make your brown eyes blue? Oh, I hope not. Thanks to these brown eyes, I haven't had to pay for a drink in 15 years. Kaboom Splat Yuck 2. Nailed it. Kaboom Splat Yuck 2. I have a schoolboy crush on Karen Strawn. Something is wrong with me. Please help. Steve, have you ever had a crush on someone you knew was horrible? I want to know I'm not alone in this. You are not alone. Kaboom Splat Yuck 2. You are not alone. I used to have a very mild thing for SE Cup. I thought, oh, she's pretty. She's nice looking. And then I realized, oh, she's awful. She's just the most awful person in the world. And I got over it really quick. But yes, you are not alone. Corey Donaldson, lightning round question. Did you ever collect any Hot Wheels or Matchbox vehicles when you were growing up? Oh, yeah. I had the carrying case, like the sort of plastic box thing that opened in the front and you had little shelves in it that you could put all your Matchbox or Hot Wheels cars in. Yeah, totally. I was, for a time when I was a kid from about maybe ages 5 or 6 up through, I don't know, 10, 11, I was hugely into Hot Wheels and Matchbox. Yeah, absolutely. Justin Parallax, Steve, here's the more upbeat, cheerful question I promised. I'm a Brit, so I don't do Thanksgivings, but I check out the MST3K marathon. What's your top 5 episodes and why? Oh, boy. Okay, I love Mitchell and The Brain That Wouldn't Die, because not only are they both incredibly funny episodes in their own right, but the handoff from Joel to Mike was just splendidly done, was just terrific. Cave Dwellers, because I believe that was the first episode that I ever owned on video, and I just watched it over and over again forever when I first was getting into the show. And I just love Cave Dwellers. It's one of my favorite episodes. Space Mutiny, which is my wife and I's favorite episode. We watch that together several times a year at least and just laugh our asses off. It's our shared, it's like our episode. So I love Space Mutiny. But my all-time favorite is The Amazing Colossal Man, because that was the first MST3K episode that I ever actually watched. And they used to do these syndicated episodes of MST3K called the Mystery Science Theater Hour, where they would take episodes and split them in half and show half this week and half next week. And I saw The Amazing Colossal Man in that way late one night on some UHF channel as I was flipping through the channels, before I went to bed, and I just fell in love with it instantly. So Amazing Colossal Man was the first MST3K episode I ever watched, and I got it right away, and I loved the show right away, and for that I will always be grateful, and it will always be my favorite MST3K episode. Radical Bacon, I ordered something and it was shipped via FedEx, and I saw that it went through Hagerstown. Is FedEx a big thing there, changing the nature of the town, or do you hardly notice it? Or something else? It's a big employer in this area. It's probably one of the biggest employers in the area other than Volvo, which runs a big plant in Hagerstown and is probably the biggest private employer. But yeah, FedEx is a pretty big deal. I mean, I can't tell you how things are different because of it, because it's been here for so long that I don't remember what things were like before they opened the FedEx distribution center. But yeah, I know a lot of people that work there or have worked there before. It's a pretty big deal. Sabrina Lozides Meredith, Steve, I was listening to your review of Raging Bull, and you guys talked about the 1950s live TV specials and such. Have you ever delved into old radio dramas at all? My personal favorites are The Shadow with Orson Welles and the original Star Wars A New Hope. Have you ever listened to old radio dramas, or if not, would you ever want to try it? I find it relaxing when I have migraines because I can close my eyes and imagine all the people and places. What do you think? Yeah, I love radio dramas. There are a bunch of classic radio dramas on the Internet Archive that people can just listen to for free, and I treasure those. I love, there was an old sort of suspense anthology show in the 40s and I think into the 50s called The Whistler that I just love. I could listen to those episodes just constantly. And the Orson Welles stuff is great. Mercury, Orson Welles Mercury Theater, which is the show that did the original War of the Worlds. And there are more recent radio dramas too. Like in the early 2000s, they produced a radio series based on the Twilight Zone. And a lot of those are excellent, are really, really terrific. So yeah, I love radio dramas. I'm a big fan. Joe McClory, in your opinion, what is the worst thing Trump has said or done since becoming the elect? God damn it. Take your pick. I mean, I made a video earlier this week saying that he actually would have won the popular vote if not for all the millions of illegal votes was the worst thing he's ever said, because not only does it tout this unfounded conspiracy theory about illegal voting and voter fraud that threatens confidence in our democracy, but it also suggests that he's still reading InfoWars and taking that as a credible news source, even though he's going to be the fucking president. But, I mean, it might be the flag burning thing that he said a couple of days later, where he said, people who burn the flag, it shouldn't be allowed to burn the flag. And if you burn the flag, you should go to prison or lose your citizenship, which is unconstitutional, which is something that we just don't do. We execute people far more than we take away their citizenship, right? The citizenship thing just never happens. So that might be the worst thing. because not only does it demonstrate his authoritarian mindset, which is never something you want to see from a future president, that he's just basically an authoritarian thug in waiting, and people who do something I don't like, they should be thrown in prison and lose their citizenship. But it also shows just how appallingly ignorant he is of the Constitution, because you can't take someone's citizenship away as a punishment for a crime. The Supreme Court ruled almost 60 years ago. You can't do it. It's unconstitutional. It's cruel and unusual punishment. Trump doesn't seem to know that, doesn't seem to care. So I think that would be the worst thing that he has said since he was elected so far. Possibly by the time you watch this video, he will have said something worse. That's it for the lightning round. It is time now for the shout out of the week, and the shout out this week goes to the YouTube channel belonging to Paul Roth. Paul's channel is the sort of thing that we need a lot more of here on YouTube. Paul is a supporter of progressive causes. He is a supporter of feminism and LGBTQ rights, and is a great person to listen to on those issues, a very informed, passionate voice on those sorts of human rights, equality issues. And he did a video recently on the Trump election and his reaction to it, and answering some concerns and questions that viewers of his had, and it was just fantastic. He comes at things with such an honest, open-minded, compassionate viewpoint. And I so appreciate that, and I wish that sort of thing were more common and more popular here on YouTube. And I would like to do my part to make it at least a little bit more popular on YouTube by sending you to Paul Roth's YouTube channel. Check it out, see if you like it as much as I do, and if you do, give him a subscription, give him some likes and shares, and just help to boost Paul's exposure a little bit, because I think he is fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, let me tell you about the Lemme Listen podcast. These are podcasts that are created by my very good buddy Jason Harding, a.k.a. Jason with a D, the puppet master of Opinionville. Yes, these are podcasts that are co-hosted by Jason in most cases, that are produced by him. They include such podcasting gems as the original Lemme Listen podcast, which is Lemme Finish, which he co-hosts with Finite Atticus. There's also Filmtastic, Voyage, a movie review podcast, which is co-hosted by Mike and Alex. There is American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, the hilarious improv comedy podcast. There is Cinetific, which reviews the scientific accuracy of popular movies, which is hosted by Professor Jason and Professor Aaron. And then, of course, there is Late Seating, the tardy movie review podcast, co-hosted by Jason and me, where we look at classic films, we give them a fresh review, we make fun of them while we summarize them, and then we decide whether the movies live up to their reputations, whether those reputations are for good or for bad. You can listen to our most recent episode, which went up last week, which is our review of the Martin Scorsese classic Raging Bull. And you can get ready for our next episode, which will go up next week, which is our review of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I know, we're reopening old wounds. It's something that a lot of us would just rather forget. But there's a new Star Wars movie coming out, and we just have to deal with this. We have to deal with this. We have to deal with Episode 1, because Episode 1 is a prequel. Rogue One is a prequel, hopefully not a terrible one, but a prequel nonetheless. And we're gonna take another look at Episode 1. Maybe it'll be better than we remember. Who knows? That'll be our next episode. So if you want to do a little bit of homework and you want to be able to get the jokes, or at least just share our pain, maybe carve 2 hours out of your schedule between now and next Friday and watch Star Wars Episode 1. Or don't. Please, you know what? Don't do it. I don't want you going to do it just because I told you to do it. Just don't ignore. Forget that I ever said that. Forget that I said that. But you should definitely listen to the Late Seating episode when it comes out, and you should listen to all of the episodes of Late Seating and all of the episodes of all of the excellent Lemme Listen podcasts by going to LemmeListenPodcasts.com. That's it for me, everybody. I am out of here. I want to remind you, as always, to please leave a comment on this video asking me your questions for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. Hey folks, one more thing before I go. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.